Hi, my name is Olivia Melsa, and today I'm going to be interviewing a mentor of mine who is a veterinarian. I've wanted to be a veterinarian ever since I was 10 years old because I want to help animals. This is Dr. Davis, a veterinarian located in Georgetown. Dr. Davis, would you like to tell us what led you to become a veterinarian?
I kind of always knew I wanted to be a veterinarian, but I kind of took a different route. I had two different interests in life. I was very interested in space and airplanes, but also loved animals. And so as a kid, I was just naturally pretty decent at math and physics. And so I just decided to go into engineering in college. And so I became an aerospace engineer and worked for the space program for about 8 years. I always had a passion for animals my entire life, and I decided to go back to school to pursue my doctorate of veterinary medicine, and then I became a vet.
What education and training did you go through to start your career?
When I went to college to get my undergraduate degree, I got a bachelor's of science in engineering, in aerospace engineering, and then I later, through working, got a master's degree that was unrelated, and then I continued to take classes. Once I decided I wanted to go to vet school, I took classes, prerequisites, so that I could have all of the appropriate classes that are required when you apply for veterinary school. So a couple of various chemistries and different science courses that I didn't have to take for engineering. I did that when I was working as an engineer, and then I applied to vet school while I was working and then got accepted. But for most people who want to be a veterinarian, they will go to college and they will get a 4-year degree, usually in a science major. Typically, either once they've graduated or during their last year of their undergraduate degree, they will apply for veterinary school, which is another 4 years, just like human medical school. Veterinary medical school is 4 years after regular college, and then after that, when you graduate, you get a doctorate of veterinary medicine, or a DVM, and then at that point you have the ability to practice as a veterinarian, and you're allowed to do any type of specialization that you feel comfortable and equipped to do.
What are some good schools to go to for this field of study?
If you are taking the appropriate classes and major in order to prepare yourself for veterinary school, as long as you get good grades, then most colleges, accredited colleges, are going to be a good choice. The main point is that you need to have a good GPA in your undergraduate degree, mostly because that shows motivation, it shows that you can master the subjects, and also, especially if you're applying to vet school in Texas, the vet school at Texas A&M is extremely competitive, and so basically it's a numbers game. The higher GPA and kind of more well-rounded you are in terms of your extracurriculars and your training and experience, the better candidate you're going to be. As far as veterinary schools go, the cool thing about vet schools versus med schools, and you'll hear human medical doctors say this, it is a lot harder to become a vet than it is to become a human medical doctor. And really the reason is there's so few veterinary medical schools. Just in the United States, there's only about 28, versus human medical schools, there's hundreds. And so that being said, really any veterinary school that you get accepted to is going to be an awesome school.
What does this career entail?
Of course, the main focus is medicine and healing, which is super awesome if you're a nerd like me and you love science and you love learning. Of course, it requires, or it entails, mastery of a lot of different subjects. It definitely entails compassion. A lot of people will say that this career is one of the few remaining altruistic careers in that your whole goal is to help the helpless, help something that's innocent, generally speaking, coming from a very compassionate place. So a lot of veterinarians have bleeding hearts, and they're very compassionate, and they want to not only help animals but help people, because as a lot of you know who own animals, I mean, they're like your family members, and so when they're sick, it hurts you, it hurts your heart. And so when I get to take care of animals and heal them specifically, or take away their pain in other ways, it makes me feel so good, because I'm helping the animal, but I'm also helping the family. Ultimately, as the veterinarian in the hospital, you have to make the final call. You have to make decisions all day long. And for someone who is a little bit indecisive, like me in my personal life, it can be challenging to just have to make decisions all day long. You have to be able to act fast if there's an emergency, delegate, communicate for sure, because you have to communicate all of the things that you need to do with animals to the owners. You know, that's one of the bummers about veterinary medicine if you're not a people person, is that unfortunately you do have to deal with people quite a bit in terms of the owners, and explaining what needs to be done and getting them to approve it. Also working with your coworkers and your teammates. Teamwork is so crucial, leading by example, all of these things. It definitely entails a little bit of thick skin. Sometimes you'll have to deal with difficult people or difficult situations, sad situations too. I will say most of the time when we have to do something sad, like a euthanasia, which is when we put an animal to sleep to end their pain and suffering, most of the time it is a blessing and a good thing. But sometimes it's a difficult decision and a difficult conversation, and so it entails me having patience, compassion, and understanding of what's going on with the animal's life and the people's life and various different factors. So that's a lot that this career entails, but the cool thing about that is that it is never boring.
What is the potential salary of a veterinarian?
We're working full-time, which is usually for a veterinarian 4 to 5 days a week, just because it's an extremely emotionally and physically draining job. You'll probably start somewhere between 65 and 70 to 75,000 per year, which is a good salary. And then you just kind of work your way up in terms of, you do typically get bonuses, or you get a pay raise annually. And I'd say, you know, typically when you're 5 to 10 years out of veterinary school, you can easily be making, you know, about 100 to 130 or 140,000 per year. So it definitely can be a very lucrative career.
What are the advantages of this career?
I can still truly say that I feel so fortunate to be a veterinarian. I love my job. I'm passionate about what I do. It's kind of like a hobby. Like, if I were to choose a cool hobby to do, it would be this, which is pretty neat to say if that's your job. When you can heal something or make something that's very sick better, I mean, that is extremely rewarding. It's hard to put into words, not just from that cool medical scientific perspective, but seeing the emotions turn around in a family that is so devastated that their family member is sick or injured, and you're able to help that pet for them. It's unbelievable how good and cool that is, to be able to help in that way. Other advantages, I think I mentioned that I'm a huge nerd, which means I like learning. Being a veterinarian, you have to kind of commit yourself to lifelong learning, because there's literally no way that you can know everything, especially in the medical field. It's just so complicated, so complex, and so you're constantly learning, you're constantly researching, reading, and then new diseases arise too, which is cool. And so I like that. I think that's an advantage, to constantly challenge yourself, challenge your brain, doing amazing, cool surgeries, putting things back together, taking nasty tumors out, going into the guts and taking out, the gross things that dogs eat, and the toys and the toilet paper and all kinds of things that you have to fish out of their intestines. That is really, really cool and a huge advantage of a job. And just like I mentioned before, one of the best parts is that it's never boring. And you're just doing new stuff every single day. You never know what's going to walk through that door.
What are some possible disadvantages of this career?
The major consideration for even going to vet school is that veterinary school is hugely expensive. Another disadvantage is that you're going to have to deal with people who can get emotional, because having pets that are sick that they have to spend money on can be upsetting to people. Even with the euthanasias, which you might think right now are very sad and something that you wouldn't be able to do, ultimately, if an animal is suffering with an incurable disease and you have a family that is just seeing this animal in pain day after day after day, if you're able to communicate that there's nothing that we can do to cure this disease, and we're called to show mercy on these animals, that euthanasia can actually be a blessing. And so I will say 9 times out of 10 it's actually a good scenario, but of course you're going to see people upset and crying, and those are less fun days for sure. So that can be an advantage and a disadvantage. Thank you so much for interviewing me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Davis, for participating in this interview and telling us what it takes to become a veterinarian.